All right, good evening, everyone. We will begin this evening with a few workshop items. Our first workshop item this evening is for 986 Portland Road. This is Cloverleaf Subdivision Phase 2, and this is a sketch plan review. Do you have anything to add, Emily?
This will be for 138 dwelling units. It's going to have 2 solar arrays, a commercial lot in the front, and then 1 single-family home, and then there'll be some associated site improvements. We've provided you the information for what reviews this has to go through. We've compiled some staff reviews we've received so far, and some considerations. We're talking about architectural considerations, solar, net residential acreage, and then water and sewer, which are all things that the applicant is already thinking about. And then Joe has provided Joe Laverrier's city engineer review memos in the packet as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. And the applicant?
How you doing?
Hey, go ahead.
My name's Tim Issue. I'm with Teradyne Consultants, representing Cloverleaf Development LLC for Phase 2 of the Cloverleaf Development Project. Emily did a good job of describing what we're proposing for Phase 2. Just going to run through Phase 1 ever so quickly so people can recall what was approved in 2022. It includes 120 multifamily units on a 68-acre property. The property is located just north of Aquaboggin and is provided with 326 feet of frontage along Portland Road. As part of the Phase 1, there was 10 12-unit apartment buildings, multi-purpose buildings, storage, hardscaped courtyards, landscaping areas, dog park, stormwater management, and the development was served by a 1,000-foot-long access drive that was built to city standards. First phase encompassed only 10 acres of the 68 acres, and the remaining 58 acres remained undeveloped. There is also part of that original property is a 50-foot right-of-way that extends the property from Apple Tree Lane along the northwest side of the rear of the property, and underground utilities were extended in the site. So that was Phase 1. So Emily has placed up the concept plan. You guys can all see that. So what we're looking to do for Phase 2 is to add 138 multifamily units that will be located on 9 buildings. The 9 buildings are not all the same as they were in Phase 1. The units are broken out, so 5 of the buildings will contain 12 units, 3 will contain 24 units, and the final building will feature 6 units. There will also be 24 2- and 3-car garages located throughout the project site, and there will also be centrally located pickleball courts and support buildings for the facility. The access road from Phase 1 will be extended 1,550 feet to serve the next and final phase for the 138 units. And public utilities from Phase 1 will be extended. Well, Phase 2's elevation is lower than Phase 1, so there will be a private pump station that will be approved by Howard and will be installed as part of that Phase 2 project. And also during the Development Review Committee process, it was brought up that the Apple Tree Lane, which is, I wish we could, can we zoom in on that a little more, please? If everyone can see that, Apple Tree Lane, it was proposed just a single residence down there, but staff had recommended that maybe gravel drive could be extended and connected to Phase 2 and be gated with a knockbox for fire department and for public safety to have access to that area of the city and through that property. So we did reconfigure this plan that we're looking at here is not exactly the plan that you have in your packets. So, because we incorporated the development review comments, and we wanted to talk about that tonight because the applicant agrees that that is a a good approach to take and good for the city and for the subdivision that he's proposing to develop overall. So we did do some reconfiguring of that. Stormwater management for phase 2 will be a gravel wetland, roof drain, filter strips, and meadow buffers, just some similar to what we had in phase 1. So relatively low impact, and so all the development activities will be handled by those stormwater managements, and then we'll adhere to DEP and to city requirements. Project permitting is anticipated to be a major subdivision site approval for the subdivision site plan for the city of Saco, planning board approval. We will be amending the main DEP site location permit for phase 1. And we will be acquiring a tier 2 wetland alteration permit for the large wetland that we will be crossing. So basically the permit, the wetland alterations for this proposed project are just for the crossing of the wetland, and then all the development activities are to be taking place on the developable property. And then again, extending the road down to connect to Apple Tree Lane for public safety. So, and we are providing frontages for that single. So as far as proposed, as Emily has stated, there are 2 solar arrays that are proposed, and they're basically auxiliary to the site. They won't be, at this time, providing full power for the proposed phase 1, phase 2, but at a later date, it's possible that another array could be installed, so that would be to power the entire facility. But now it's just auxiliary. And there's also, as part of this project, phase 1, there was an out parcel along Route 1 that was just left at grade, and now that is proposed to be a commercial out parcel with the entrance being as part of the phase 1 entrance, so it wouldn't be a new curb cut onto Route 1. It would be a curb cut within the development. And 1 single family residential lot all the way down back. And also the applicant is proposing, it's not shown on this plan, but to connect to some of the trail systems in the city and to provide possible public access from Route 1 down through to the trail system. So having said that, and having a look at the amended plan that we provided tonight, I'd be welcome any questions from members of the board.
Great, thank you. Board members, any questions for the applicant? Joyce?
Well, just to clarify, you're saying there's going to be a gate between Apple Tree Lane and the driveway?
Yes,
So-
with a knockbox for the public safety.
So the residential lot's going to be accessed from Apple Tree?
Correct. And provided with frontage off Apple Tree as well, to make it a legal lot.
Are there any plans for a phase 3, because you still have a lot of open space out back, or is that just because it's so wet, probably not going to be built?
No, ma'am. No, this is the final phase that we're proposing here tonight. And again, through some of that open space, we'll be proposing like a trail system to connect to some of the trails that are out back.
Right, because that backs up to the Sylvan Trail.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, the only other comment I'd have, I am sure the abutter on the north is my mom, which, of course, when we have a meeting, and this was already discussed in the last phase, there, I think the northerly boundary of phase 1 is fenced
Thanks.
to keep people off the
Yep, and buffered.
farm. So I assume that there would be a similar fence.
Absolutely. There'll be a whole
phase-
perimeter
phase
buffer
2.
for the project, yep. So the visibility of the project would be not well from off-site, it would be mostly on-site, because phase 2 is Phase one along Route 1 is at a higher elevation. Phase 2 goes down, crosses the wetland, and gets to the developable land, but it's at a lower elevation than Phase 1. And between all the vegetated buffering that will remain in the open space, it won't be very visible.
Yeah, similar to what happened with Reedy Seafood, I think. It's far enough back from Route 1 and
Yep.
at a lower grade.
Tim, can you explain the gate again? That,
It's basically for public safety. It won't be for any of the users of the Cloverleaf development.
so where would that be located? Right down
Yes.
closer to Apple
So
Tree?
Apple Tree Lane will be extended, as Emily's pointing out here.
Sure.
And then there will be the gravel drive going into and connecting to Phase 2.
Okay.
There will be a gate and knockbox located there. So that will not be a through street at all. It's just for public safety.
Okay.
And will be maintained by the applicant.
Okay. Any other questions from board members? Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I had some questions just with regards to the trash receptacles, the dumpster locations. We're probably going to want to see turning movements to make sure that those are accessible from a truck, because they seem like they're kind of
Absolutely.
tucked in some tight areas.
Yep.
Along with that, I didn't know what the plan for kind of snow storage was. It seems like a lot of the ends.
It looks, from the concept plan, it looks like we'll have plenty of room to
Okay.
develop those areas, but they have not been identified at this time.
So touching on the gate was kind of important. I had the public access issue more for needing to think broader. One, there's a lot of units in here, and if there's any sort of public safety emergency, how do we get people safely out of this area? It's a dead-end street, and at the minimum, I think a gate is essential, where the Knox box, where they have access, but ultimately, I think it's important for us as a board to try to have some connectivity, some loop through, so that there's dual means of access to when we get to developments this size.
So when staff recommended it, we embraced it and went right ahead and amended our plan so that we could have that discussion tonight. And you can see preliminary concept of what this would look like.
Understandable, but I'm just kind of thinking for my thoughts with the board, and as well as you, if there was any way you could have some sort of a loop around, even in the event that 10 years from now, there's, an underground utility issue further up and you have to excavate part of that roadway. How do we get access, temporary access for a week to all these units? Just kind of a thought.
So Jeff, if I could, so you're in support of a security gate?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's essential, particularly with the Knox box system. As you know, the only people that have access to that are the first responders. They can very easily, believe with radio dispatch, get access, open that up. So if there was a horrible event that's going on in our town and they needed to evacuate people from those back units, they could open that gate and quickly get them out. I think that that's kind of important, and it starts to protect, the Apple Tree Lane neighborhood, so they're not having a high volume development kind of accessing through their point. It's kind of a two for one. I mean, my preference would be if there was a way that they were able to loop around either very close to the beginning or back to Route 1. But we see this a lot of parcels that are very deep with very little frontage. It's not oftentimes easy for them to accomplish that.
I think that, I guess I think that's interesting that we required, or staff requested the access, and then we put a gate. That, I'm not, and then in an emergency situation there, Route 1 wouldn't be the best option. I just think that's an interesting thought, that we're going to create the access and then not let anybody use it.
Well, I mean, I would be more in favor, and I'm not really familiar with Apple Tree Lane. I think maybe this would warrant a site walk where we could go and get a real feel for that area. My my preferred option would be what you describe, is having access that is ungated. But if that is not an option, and there's, we either see a huge impact on the neighbors, where we have, you're not meeting our good neighbor standards, and that's a conflict. The second alternative, and least desirable, would be to have it gated, versus third, not having any access at all. in my
Yeah,
opinion.
so I guess I'm gonna throw another option just for discussion, that perhaps in a scenario like this, there's an electronic gate, and it's limited to a card access to the residents of that area.
Well, currently,
But I'm not sold on the benefit of the gate.
well,
General.
if I may, so currently, the design team consists of VHB doing a traffic movement permit, and that focus is on the intersection with Route 1 for the Phase 1 roadway that will be extended 1,500 feet, being built to city standards. So as of right now, the design team's approach is all towards that intersection at Route 1.
With a gate access. Or, well, with a gate, assuming there's no traffic coming from Flag Pond and Apple Tree.
Correct. Yes.
And there's probably there's no benefit for somebody coming down Flag Pond Road who wants to take a left onto Route 1 to cut through this neighborhood, because there's a traffic light if you continue down Flag Pond Road.
Well, that's one of the things that I'm trying to understand as well. There's light at
People-
Flag Pond.
yeah.
I can't imagine someone would want to go through here to make an unsignalized.
Right.
Left.
People aren't going to use this as a shortcut, but when we were looking at Phase 1, there were some concerns expressed by the neighbors on Flag Pond Road. I'm not even sure Apple Tree Lane was really developed, wondering, okay, what's happening here in the back, and how is this going to impact us? And they were really concerned about a lot of additional traffic being dumped onto the road in front of them. So this is probably in part to address those concerns.
Yeah, I
It's
like
a
the
pretty
con-
low-density
yeah,
neighborhood
I like the
right now.
connection. I imagine a yellow rusted gate that once it gets put there, it is there forever, it gets overgrown, and it just, that's what I'm envisioning, that no one ever goes through it. It's underutilized, and, excuse me, that's sort of what I'm envisioning in my head, and I'm trying to, that's all. But this, again, just for discussion, but
But the city doesn't want people to be using it, except in emergencies.
I'm not, that's the part that I'm not understanding that part. Build a road, but then don't let anybody use it.
Well, particularly where we're always trying to strive for interconnectability, right? We're always
Yeah.
struggling with dead ends, and granted, this is a private subdivision, but we really need to have, I think, fluid flow. And we need to discuss, for not just this particular application, but a lot of them, how we can really try to tie that in. That Apple Tree Lane had that future stub for that purpose, and oftentimes we don't utilize them.
Yeah, I imagine it's a nice, convenient way to get to North Saco and Buxton and Dayton and start going out to Cornish or whatnot, or not that going around is really out of the way, but we build a road and then you got to drive all around. Can't use it. That's all. But Jim, on the same item? Or-
Yes, I guess on Apple Tree Lane, I think it makes sense to have it available as an option for people on a regular basis. But I'm wondering, later in this process, will the owners of property on Apple Tree Lane, will they be notified of this development? So they can participate in a public hearing?
Mr. Chair, you'd like me to?
Yes, please.
So, yes, a neighborhood meeting will be required, so neighborhood will be notified for that neighborhood meeting, and then they'd also be notified at the public hearing stage after the applications are received and under review. Staff had recommended, just some background on the staff meeting where we made the recommendation, we had recommended at least an emergency gated access, and we felt comfortable with the gated access. I don't want to speak for every staff member, but knowing that there may be some concerns from the neighborhood that exists in Apple Tree Lane if you did a full connection and in that area.
Thank you.
I just have a couple other questions,
Sure.
Mr. Chair. The phase one that's completed, and is it fully occupied now?
Kerry Anderson, the developer.
Good evening, Kerry Anderson, representing Cloverleaf. The first 5 buildings are essentially completed. The back 5 buildings are about probably 60% constructed, and we're hoping to get a CO for the first 5 buildings in the next 30 days.
Is there anything about this that you learned from phase one in terms of what you anticipate for traffic and parking and snow removal and trash pickup that you then utilized in phase two to make it work even better than you had hoped for phase one?
Well, we do have other projects that we own, and the trash pickup is all private. We have private contractors that we work with on that. We do see a need for garages, or there's demand for garages, so we didn't introduce them in phase one, but we are introducing them in phase two. In terms of traffic flow and whatnot, most of these apartments these days are occupied by 1 or 2 people. You don't really see families, so you see 1 or 2 cars. Demand is really kind of still through the roof, and it's just not enough of it.
I just had a few other questions. I noticed, at least in the plans that we were given, that it looks like there's a potential future solar array further out, what I guess might be phase 3, or is that still in the offing? Because it looks like some of the wetlands, if I'm understanding the map correctly, some of the wetlands on the map that I'm seeing look different than the one on the map that's on the screen in front of us. Do you think that is still a possibility, or?
So in designing phase 2, we really tried to stay minimal wetland impact, and for the most part, it's just the crossing. The solar array for 1 and 2 will happen. There's already the funds in place to make that happen. We just need the permitting to do it. It's about 1.5 megawatts. It's about 2,900 solar panels. And right now, that's not going to quite meet the need of phase 1 and 2. So what we did was add an area which is all upland for a 3rd solar area if turns out that we want to do it, which we would probably want to do it, but it's kind of like take one step at a time. Mm-hmm. The question came earlier about, is there going to be any more development? The only other development you'd see in there would be a potential, I suppose, 3rd area for solar, but there would be no other dwelling unit density built.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. I think go ahead, Jeff. I think we kind of cut you a little bit early.
Oh,
but
no problem.
please continue.
I like the discussion. I think that's important. So while we're still on solar arrays, I was just wondering, I view, your phase 1 and phase 2 solar arrays as being part of the residential development, and as such, and with our commercial solar array ordinances, that would all be fed underground. So, and I'm not seeing any designation of space here, because it looks like you're kind of, working around the wetland topography. Just wondering, you know, if we see some more information on that as we move forward.
Of course, in the phase one underground electrical would be extended. Phase two would be, from the solar arrays, would be extended back to the transformer and then would be distributed for power within the right-of-way.
Yeah, but there'll be several pieces of equipment, so you're going to need some real estate there to make all of that happen. So we'll be able to see that hopefully on the phase two. And like I said, just the intention of all being underground to meet both ordinances, both for subdivision and for commercial solar. Something I'd be thinking of seeing. I was wondering, how many units in this unit, how many units in phase two will be low income?
There's no low income, it's all market driven.
So all phase one is 100% market driven, and you're looking at phase two as all 100% market driven.
That's right.
Okay. Okay, I guess that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other board members? Jim?
No, I'm all set.
No. Kaylin? No, those are good. The few other items I had was just getting an understanding on the landscaping plan for this phase, lighting, building renderings, we talked about that earlier. There's quite a bit of area out there, so I noticed the pickleball courts and appreciate that. I was wondering if there's any other outdoor areas that may become part of the project, any other fields or anything for the neighborhood or the
For
community?
recreation purposes?
Yeah.
I suppose, that can be discussed during the review process. Right now, we were just talking about trail systems.
Yeah, you mentioned the trail systems. Just a question, doesn't have to be answered right this second, but something I was thinking about. We talked about the solar. So the intent of the solar is for these projects to help reduce the burden for these buildings and these facilities here. Snow removal is usually on our list, but other than that, you mentioned traffic. We hit the other items. That's Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just when you started mentioning building profiles, I thought it was early for the sketch review, but looking at the garages, and I think you've asked for this a couple times, is if maybe we could get a perspective from where the view would be when we do like a line of sight analysis. And it looks like you have a fair amount of room there, but maybe just one of them, because those garages are oftentimes on the corner of your parking. So we have a sense of what the visibility will be for a car that's trying to negotiate out onto the main throughway, the main driveway. I'm kind of anticipating that's like a 5-foot sidewalk, so there should be plenty of room, but when you start doing some of those renderings, maybe a perspective from the position of the driver at a stop line, a stop bar on any of those. I mean, they look pretty consistent, but I think that might be helpful to get a sense of what they'll be seeing as they navigate out into the mainway. Thank you.
Any other thoughts from board members? All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Our next item in our workshop this evening is for zero gravity cannabis. This is a zoning text amendment request to add adult use cannabis manufacturer to the industrial zoning district. Anything additional to add, Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've had this amendment request for some time. The City Council looked at it at the beginning of April as new business. I took some questions from them, so tonight's an opportunity for me to gather questions from the planning board and for the applicant to gather any questions. And then the next steps of this is that it would actually go back to the City Council for a first reading process, and then it would go here back to planning board for a public hearing. I would anticipate that the public hearing would be the first meeting in July to give us enough time for noticing that.
So this evening, Emily, this is just sort of, again, just a workshop. You're not looking for a recommendation by the board this evening?
No, no recommendation this evening. Your comments will be binding because we have an open petition in front of us. It's not a sketch plan.
Okay, thank you.
And we did a similar process for 19 Industrial Park Road text amendment request and the Kevin Bedard New County Road text amendment request. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And we have an applicant with us this evening, if you want to add to that and give us a brief little presentation, or?
Yeah, Jill, my lawyer was going to do this, but she's out of town. So I'm Patrick Robinson with Cosmic Solutions. ZGE Botanicals we're already participating in the adult use program in Scarborough, where we have cultivation. And we've been over here at 74 Industrial Park Road for about 5 years. And we have so we're state licensed as a medical dispensary there and locally licensed through Saco as a medical dispensary. So we have cultivation there, and we also have manufacturing, which is an extraction lab, which the town is very well aware of. You guys did some trainings there like 3 or 4 years ago, and so it's all licensed under, and we also have a small medical dispensary storefront that just got approved through you guys, which is great. And so really what we're looking to do is just participate in that adult use market, which has no public-facing, changes to Saco or to you. It really is just from the way I see it, it's just changing the classification of what we're already doing. And from our standpoint, we're just going to have to actually add more security to fit the state's requirements of an adult use extraction facility. So we're not looking to do it. We're just looking to be able to participate in the growing market, no pun intended, the adult use market, right? And we're kind of pigeonholed to the medical market right now, which is shrinking. And it's a heavy investment over there. So, we have 25 employees working there. We're heavily vested in Saco, and the longer we can't participate in that adult use market, the more detrimental it is to us from a business standpoint. So we're just trying to get that classification changed over so we can start extracting and taking our material from Scarborough instead of sending it out to other people, which is not profitable to do it for us. We can bring it to our own facility over here. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Any questions from board members? Jeff?
Mr. Chair, thank you. So Patrick, I guess I didn't understand. You have a cultivation facility in Scarborough, and you have an extraction facility in Saco, but there is no cultivation that takes place in Saco, correct? You have both?
We have cultivation in Saco as well. Actually, it's our larger cultivation facility than we have the adult use facilities in Scarborough. And there, we just cultivate, and we package. It's very lean and mean, just efficient, smaller facility. Over here in Industrial Park Road is our larger facility, which has a really, really beautiful lab, a nice packaging room. So yeah, we have both over here.
I guess I'll start off then with my notes, if you'd like, or?
Please continue.
So, obviously one of the first thoughts that came to mind is the odor control. And my understanding from the extraction side of it, and that's all we're trying to do, is we're trying to stay very focused on your ability to use your extraction equipment to get the resins out of that, and then to be able to sell it to a different market. Exact same process, but just because it's going to a different customer, it needs to be licensed or permitted differently. Is that 100% accurate?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So obviously, no matter what we decide, it doesn't affect some of the odor control issues. And it kind of, that seems to be the biggest thing I hear from a lot of people is, oh my God, we're driving up the highway going to vacation in Maine and we hit Saco and it just, that's all you can smell is, and it's not necessarily this particular applicant because there are several industries. But when I bring myself back to the extraction piece, it's a little bit different in my mind than a lot of the other uses, the cultivation side of it, because this is typically a huge capital investment in the equipment that you're using, which in the sense of the city is now taxable personal property. He's already invested, he's committed into our town, and he's already doing the process. It's just opening it up to be able to sell it to a different clientele, different customer. So I guess there's a taxable benefit to that piece that we need to look at. I guess as this grows, we're constantly battling these regulations on what they can do and what they can't do, and that's a part that's a little bit perplexing to me. And so trying to stay on that extraction process, this would increase the volume of your extraction production, which means that you would also have increased volume of your waste solvents, correct?
Potentially. I mean, our main focus is to use it for our own purposes internally so minimally it would increase, yes.
So do you have like a disposal plan for the waste?
Yeah, that's regulated. Like,
that's regulated,
yeah.
And you have like proof documentation of how you've been doing it for your current operation?
Yeah, and we had to do that with Saco.
Yep. Okay.
As well. I mean, it's a process, and the solvents, the solvents are basically it's run through and then evaporated and recollected and then reused. It's kind of a recycling situation. So we're not dumping solvents anywhere. It's kind of an evaporation process.
And the fire department, everyone's on board with how much solvent you have and the volatility, the hazard that's there. And in that sense, for me, the extraction process being in an industrial park makes sense, right? It's not something we want to have in a light commercial area. We want to have that in a higher risk kind of segregated area. So I don't know, I guess I'm open to more board discussion because it's, they're not really changing what they're doing. They're just opening up some market. But I think there's also all this other effect of, the odor and, the use of commercial space that typically doesn't have a whole lot of employment opportunities, right? We lose a lot of benefits when this industry takes over our industrial parks, at least in my mind, right? They're taking up very large buildings, very large electrical capacity, very little return for the city as far as personal property taxes. They don't typically have much machinery in the cultivation side of things. But in your particular case, the extraction side is a much larger investment between the air handling and the hazardous location equipment.
And as far as the market and taking over an industrial space, that's actually shrinking. People are going out of business because the market got way too saturated. The only reason we're surviving and doing well is that we were early on. We have a great brand, a great product, and good relationships. So I don't, if anything, that industrial space is going to open up more in the future because there's just too many cultivators right now for what the market can handle.
And my interpretation, and I kind of lean towards my board members with more experience on the legal side of things, is that it seemed like the wording was very, very specific, that they just want to expand the processing in our community. They want to expand the ability to do that extraction for both markets without changing anything with regards to cultivation. And that's the way I interpret it, and I hope that maybe others can share if that's accurate in the way you interpreted the wording as well. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Jim?
I just have a few questions. So you just touched upon the medical marijuana sales, I guess, are going down, and adult use recreational is increasing. Can you just explain that a little bit more? I have no idea how the medical marijuana business is, but it would certainly make sense to do a shift over if that's what you're selling and there's not many people buying.
Yeah, in most states, when they roll out any kind of cannabis program, it always starts with a medical program where you have to go to a doctor, you get a card, and at this point, it's just kind of trivial. It's $20 online, get it, and it's just like a formality, and everybody gets their card and they go, to buy. As the adult use market matures, the price goes down to almost, because the medical is less regulated, we don't have to do nearly, so you don't have to charge as much for the product, so people would still get their medical card so that they can get cheaper product. And typically the product's better on the medical side because it's smaller companies and just more care than having multi-state operators come in for adult use and just invest millions and millions of dollars in these huge facilities. So, people just don't want to go through getting their medical card when all of these shops are just popping up and they can just walk in and, pay a little bit more. But that's how the market balances out and matures as folks like us keep participating, leave medical into adult use, with smaller companies, better products, that gives the consumer more options to get what they want without having to get a medical card. It's really the same industry at this point. It's the same thing, except one's less regulated, one's less expensive, medical. And at this point, the people that are good over here are coming over here, and it's really from a business and industry, it's messy, and it's a transition, and it's a new thing, and we're stuck over there in that position of we want to participate in both because there's a little bit of a market over here, but majority of our investment is in that building, which,
And as you, I think, or Jill Cohen indicated in a letter to us, the process for the extraction and the preparation of the product is essentially the same for medical and adult use marijuana?
It's all exactly the same, except the only thing that changes that has no effect on you or anybody else, only us, is that we just have a lot more regulation that we're going to have to do in handling our product or handling other people's product, documentation, procedures. It's just more of a headache for us, but it's necessary. And there's actually a bill in at the state that is reducing some of those from unnecessary formalities that they have us doing on the adult use side to ease up. That just went through to ease that up. So it is exactly the same.
And to follow up on what Jeff was mentioning earlier, the language, it looks like your attorney proposed some very precise language for us. Is this language that is also being used in other communities? Is this...
What language are you?
Well, she sent a letter.
Yeah, I have that.
Okay, and on the second page of the letter, she has proposed addition changes to various ordinances. Is that something that is that language being used in other communities as well to try to expand the ability for businesses like yours to be able to do extraction for both adult and as well as medical marijuana facilities?
Do you mean like where she's saying manufacturers means the production, blending, infusing, compounding, or other preparation of cannabis and cannabis products including but not limited to cannabis extraction, preparation by means of chemical synthesis, manufacturing, like all of that?
Yes, yes, that's what I was.
Yes. I mean, it's kind of just a fancy way of saying that we're just taking raw material and making products. So, yeah, I mean, it's her way of saying taking biomass and turning it into what people want.
I mean, I wonder whether or not the city's current ordinances were drafted at a time when medical marijuana was like the only choice, the only game in town. And, I mean, I'm not quite sure why the city had that limitation, but certainly the
Well,
comments...
it probably was when it was the only game in town. And then we voted and everybody, well, you know, majority of people voted to allow recreational, and then it's up to each municipality, each town to choose whether they want to opt in or not. And most towns are in your position where it's just not, it's not on the front of your mind. It's not something you're really concerned about, so.
No, that's very helpful, thank you.
Yeah.
That's very helpful.
Thank you, Jim. Any other board member thoughts?
Yeah, I would, I mean, I get what you're saying, and I do think that the city just hasn't yet decided whether to opt in, and you're asking us to take that next step, where we're already allowing cultivation and processing of medical, and it's the same process with just different consumers on the other end. And actually more regulation on you, which certainly doesn't hurt us.
Right.
But not necessarily expanding your manufacturing. I mean, I guess that's going to be a different discussion at some point. If you want to expand the size of your building or add additional
Yeah.
facilities, then you'll be back in front of us anyway.
Yeah.
And you know, the fact that they're still suggesting to be limited to the I-1 zone. We already have these facilities in this zone.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, personally, I don't see an issue with it. I think it was just the city was cautious in taking their first step, allowing cultivation and manufacture for medical use to see how it went.
Yeah, when we first had the discussions, it was more of worried about the retail end of things and not realizing that we don't have to do everything. It's just one thing. We can do one thing at a time. You know.
Thank you, Joyce. Any other board member questions? So, Justin, I had a few for you. Would you need more employees as part of this?
Yeah, potentially we'd probably need 1 or 2 more employees.
And then hours of operation wouldn't change?
No.
Obviously, I suspect you would make more product. You'd be able to have more product. And then, but this again is it's just manufacturing. So once you manufacture for adult use, what happens to the product then?
We store it, and if we manufacture for somebody else, a third party, which we won't do much of, but we probably will do some, we have to store it. It goes into a track and trace system called Metric, stays in our building, and it really kind of doesn't make sense, but it's one thing that needs to be changed. We actually have to hold it for them, for that company. They get the orders in for their customers. They come pick it up and then deliver it to their customers, or we deliver it to their customers for them. They actually can't come and pick it up and store it in their facilities because they don't have a manufacturing license. So that's why we don't even necessarily want to get too far into that, because it's just we mostly want to just do it for our own products. And so it will add a little bit of work to what we're already doing, but
So that sort of gets me into the next question and trying to understand this properly. So the request is a zoning amendment to add adult use marijuana manufacturing. But it doesn't say anything about retail sales. But then in some of the proposed changes, it seems like it would allow retail sales. Is that for adult use? Is that part of it? Am I
No,
understanding it correctly?
no, I don't know why it would say retail sales. Do you? I mean, maybe it says something where we're manufacturing for other, and the end product will be retailed somewhere at a store, but it's not going to be retailed out of our manufacturing facility.
Are you thinking, Matt, where it says in the first paragraph that Cosmic Solutions would be able to manufacture and wholesale products for both medical and adult use?
Yeah, we can wholesale what we make out of that lab. That's the whole point, is to,
Right. But you're not doing a retail, this isn't talking about
No.
a retail storefront.
no, that's a whole nother
adult
license which we don't even have.
Yeah, I must have.
I mean, the final product will be retailed. Maybe it says something like that somewhere.
Okay, and then the next question, is there a time or a scenario where adult use takes over the medical portion? If everyone is allowed to do adult use, is there incentive at that point to continue to do medical manufacturing and
I mean,
sales?
I don't know. I would like medical to stay around. It has its purpose. It is very medicinal. Our standpoint is whether we are adult use or medical, we're always going to help people that need it medically, because a lot of people do need it medically. So I don't know that, unfortunately in most states, that's usually what happens, and that's due to just larger companies that come in and, just like it's capitalism, it's like,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate, but there are a lot of small medical caregivers and cultivators that that it would be unfortunate, but I don't know. It probably will.
All right, so apologies for being a little naive, but
Yeah, yeah.
if you have an adult use product and then you have a medical use product, and can they be the same, or what's the price difference? What makes them different in
The price
the
difference.
reality at the end of the day? I don't know.
It is the same thing. You're dealing with the same compounds. You're dealing with a starting product that comes from a plant, and whether you extract it or you use the flower, it is the same thing. But the difference is, the price difference and the quality difference is who can afford to go into an adult use market, where I'm paying excise tax that are insane, that don't even make sense. It's a very hard business to make money in, to be honest. Sometimes I wonder why I'm even doing it. But, your small craft medical caregiver, grower that started in the business with the only option was to do medical. And it's not regulated, highly. And you can just start your own small business and succeed, and it's been wonderful. But now, like any industry or any business, the more it's regulated, the more it's taxed, the lower the quality of the product's going to be, and the harder it is to make money. And it's just like any type of business that goes from craft to, mass production.
So is the adult use product twice the amount of money, or twice the cost?
No,
or
it's probably
three times, or
just due to the the market in Maine, an oversaturation, and, it's probably 30% more maybe on average. I don't know. It's all over the board. You go to certain areas of the state, you can buy that same, it's all over the board. It really is. And it's all based on quality, the quality, and it's just changing. People are going, that's a good question. It's hard to answer, but essentially, it's the same thing. It's just a quality difference.
Okay.
It's like getting a small craft beer versus going to buy,
Sure.
mass-produced.
All right, I guess that's my only concern long-term is if everything turns to adult use, then there's no medical use, and just how does that affect the folks that need it for medical use and
No, and that's
saturation of the market?
I'm actually
like
glad
talking
you're
about?
thinking about that because, yeah, it's
So I'm just wondering if there's a way to have verbiage that says you can do adult use manufacturing if you are doing and continue to do medical use, for example. I don't know what that does. I don't know enough about.
I mean, I
marijuana.
think it's just more of the small business philosophy than it is like requiring people to do things. Like we will always produce the same quality we have as medical producers in the adult use market.
Sure.
And we're not going to overprice, and we're not going to do some of the things that our competition does, but we also employ people, and we built up a business that just took on a life of its own, and we have to make smart business decisions if we still want to. And that business decision is if we're going to stay around, we have to participate in both markets. And
Sure.
this one market just happens to be growing at increasing its market share faster than this one, and it's just the way it's got to go.
Yeah. Any other board, Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I always find it's hard to understand for me as well. You're saying that the adult use market, the standards and regulations and measuring protocol is much stricter than the medical
Yes.
market. It's always hard for me to understand.
Well, you would think, yeah.
Yeah, right? You think it'd be more tested and refined and proven if it's going to be medical use. Second question is, I didn't quite understand. I thought you said that, your current facility at 74 Industrial Park Road, you have some cultivation, you have the manufacturing, the extraction process located there as well. Did you say you have some sort of a storefront there, or is there zero public access to that?
There's a medical storefront, because when we switched to dispensary license, it allows you, just having that one license allows you to have cultivation, manufacturing, and retail medically under one license.
Okay.
So we just have the building, so we just said, let's put a little store in the front, because why not?
Because I just wanted to touch on the petition letter from Ms. Cohen on page 4 of 6 in our packet. Says the state will license a manufacturing facility as being quote-unquote co-located for medical and adult use so long as the licensee obtains a dispensary license and an adult use manufacturing license. And then, as always, local authorization by the municipality will be required. So you have to get a dispensary license, according to her draft, which means that anybody, if somebody else wanted to come in and put another extraction unit at 80 Industrial Park Road, and they wanted to do the adult market, they would have to get a dispensary license, and they would have the option of having a storefront as well?
No, what that is saying is we're co-locating, which means we can service both markets. And the only way you can service both markets is if you're licensed in both markets. So that dispensary license allows us to service the medical market, and you guys opting in for adult use allows us to now also service the adult use market. If somebody went to 80 Industrial Park Road and just wanted to do adult use, then they just have adult use. If they just wanted to do medical, they would have to get a caregiver license. I don't even know what, other than dispensary for medical, I don't even know if a caregiver can run a lab at this point, but
So can you clarify for me, for my lack of understanding then, a dispensary license does not necessarily mean that you have a storefront? to be able to-
dispensary, typically you would think the word dispensary only applies to a storefront, but in this case, the dispensary license is a license that covers, if you get a dispensary license, you have the option to do a lab, cultivation, and retail. You don't have to do all three, but you're allowed to do all three under that dispensary license. It used to be a caregiver license, and for a caregiver license, you had these restrictions on the amount of plants you could grow, the square footage. It was just, that's the way it started, is just small caregiver licenses, and thousands of them. Now it's kind of just got consolidated to, all right, well, let's open up this dispensary, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, where now you can grow, your canopy is not limited, your plant number is not limited, you can, you can extract and you can have if the town allows you to do these things. So, it's the co-location. That just means we can service both industries if we are licensed for both of them.
I mean, would it be prudent for us to kind of get a reference or a report from like code enforcement as far as what their concerns? They're in these types of facilities much more regularly than I think many of us might be. I mean, are there extra concerns? Because the only change would be volume, right? You're bringing in more product. Would that mean more odor?
The lab honestly doesn't really produce an odor.
Even if you're holding product before it's processed?
It's minimal compared to the cultivation. The cultivation is, people bring in the product, it's bagged up, and it's not as pungent as the flower itself. It's typically trim, or fresh or frozen product that's really, you're not smelling. The lab doesn't really give off minimal compared to cultivation.
Your lab doesn't. Is there a possibility that other labs that aren't as diligent in how they handle product could be more odoriferous?
I suppose. I mean, yeah, I suppose. I don't know, but it's mostly the cultivation that gives off the odor.
Thank you, Jeff. Jim?
Just one last question. So if I understand this correctly, these ordinance changes, if they're approved by the city council, would allow you to do adult use manufacturing, which you don't have the right to do right now, right? And you could apply apparently then for an adult recreational use dispensary license if you chose.
Well, yeah, I mean, we could get licensing to open up a retail store anywhere in the state as long as the town opted in and allowed it. We would love to do one in Saco if you guys wanted to opt in for it, but that's not something we're doing right now.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because on the letter that your attorney sent, there's a reference there to a section, I don't know if you can see it on the screen, 164-4. Can you see the letter up there on the screen?
Yeah.
So, under B1, it says registered dispensary may dispense only properly packaged, inspected, and authorized medical marijuana. Then the additional language is supposed to read, and where authorized, a co-located adult use manufacturing facility may only dispense properly packaged, inspected, and authorized adult use marijuana. So is that, if Saco adopts that language, does that mean that Saco is now authorizing dispensaries for adult use recreational marijuana?
No, I think that's saying under the adult use rules by the state for manufacturing that we are going to properly package, dispense No,
Okay.
that does not mean you're opting in for retail at all. I mean, I think,
Yeah, Jim, that was the language that I was worried about as well, when I first read it, I thought it was alluding to Saco agreeing to doing adult use retail.
yeah, I mean,
But
that
as
wording,
we've had,
it's kind of unnecessary. I think she's just basically saying we're going to follow the laws under the manufacturing by OCP, the
so
state's program to package it after we do it and give it to our clients, or,
yeah, that's how I now understand it, is
yeah.
by allowing the adult use manufacturing, that facility now may only dispense properly packaged, inspected, and authorized adult use marijuana to their clients, to the other facilities
Yeah.
for their retail establishments as allowed in other municipalities. So it allows them to make it, and then if in theory you had a retail adult use storefront in another municipality, you could manufacture it in Saco and then
Properly
retails-
package it and detail.
Yeah,
Because
package
there's a lot of rules on how we package it and how
Sure.
it leaves, and,
Yeah, and then you could bring it to that facility in another town.
yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
We would be happy to provide a policy analysis. I did start reviewing this with our city attorney as well and shared it with him. He had some comments. We've also shared it with our code enforcement director. So it sounds like everyone's on the same page with what this should be. So maybe just tightening up some of that language and making it crystal clear that it's not for recreational sales out of a storefront.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, circling back to the conversation we have had this evening, I mean, where a lot of the facility you have currently and what you're doing, you're really sort of essentially doing the same thing under an adult use umbrella. I don't know. I don't see a great detrimental impact to the industrial zone by allowing the adult use manufacturing, given these updated terms and proposed additions and discussions we've had. I guess I know we still need to, and Emily, please correct me if I'm wrong, this would, like you mentioned, would go to city council for a reading. It would come back to the planning board for an official recommendation. And then if city council approves the amendment, would we see the applicant back under a planning board? Would this be a conditional use? Would it be just an allowed use? Would they come back to the board, or?
So if it was a conditional use, I'd have to just confirm that they would need to come back to the board. Doesn't sound like there's many changes interior to the facility, but they would certainly have to go through the city's licensing process. And that entails a city inspector walkthrough. When I did it in 2022, there's several departments that were going out at the time and doing those inspections when we had a license when we had a license application.
Okay. And then for the facility currently, any enforcement that needs to be completed, that's under code enforcement's office. And I know some of the odors and some of the other state regulations that Jeff had mentioned, that is currently under the code enforcement umbrella for the medical use. And even if it changes to adult use, it would still be under code enforcement umbrella to just keep in check.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions or thoughts from board members? All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, and with that, we will move into our regularly scheduled planning board agenda this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the planning board and valued community representatives, I welcome you all this evening's assembly of the Saco Planning Board. As chairman, it is my privilege to convene this gathering dedicated to the thoughtful planning and development of our community. Today, we come together with a shared commitment to shaping the future of our city in a manner that reflects our values, respects our heritage, and fulfills the needs of our residents both now and in the future. Our agenda tonight contains important matters, each requiring our careful consideration, expertise, and collaboration. As we engage in our deliberations, let us remember the profound impact these decisions will have on the lives of all, keeping in mind we are residents like you. Together, we must embrace the responsibility entrusted to us by our community, working diligently and thoughtfully to chart a course that fosters growth, prosperity, and harmony. With that, I would like to call this evening's meeting of the Saco Planning Board to order. I look forward to a productive discussion and meaningful outcomes that lie ahead. With us this evening, myself, the chairman, Matt Provenzel. To my left, our vice chair, Joyce Leary Clark. And to her left, Jeff Brochu. And then to my right, Carrie Lynn Lane. I get that correct? You did. I'm trying to roll off the tongue here. And Jim Mollier. Our city staff with us this evening is Emily Cole Prescott, our city planner, and Lisa Harmon, and our Ward 5 City Council liaison, Phil Hatch, with us this evening as well. Our first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from our May 7th meeting. Do board members have any questions, comments, or edits to those minutes?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the minutes from the Tuesday, May 7th meeting as presented.
Second.
Thank you for the motion and the second. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to approve the minutes as presented. Our next item on the agenda is public comment. This is a new item on the agenda that we've added to our standard operating procedure for planning board meetings. This is an opportunity for any residents or members of the community to come before the board and ask questions, provide recommendations, or any general comments as far as planning goes. We will limit it to general correspondences to those items and not specific applications before the board. Once we reach a time for a specific application, we'll have a public hearing and we can talk specifically about that project. But if there are any board or any members of the community here this evening that would like to come before the board and ask any questions or any general correspondences, please step to the podium and provide your name and address for the record, and we can discuss. Seeing no residents willing to or looking to speak, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda. This item is Seacoast Land Acquisitions. This is a continued application review for preliminary subdivision, conditional use, and site plan review for 13 single-family unit condominium development at Blaine Street and Roebuck Avenue, excuse me. This is map 40, lots 3, 4, 9, 10, and 11 in the medium density residential zoning district. Do you have anything to add, Emily? I believe we have a few additional correspondences this evening. Just one.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have a response to the questions that were raised for the paper streets. This response is really relative to Eastern Avenue and Portland Street, which are 2 paper streets. And I'm satisfied with the response. I did also run it through our city attorney. He was satisfied as well. He did note that Blaine Street itself is still a paper street. So the city has exercised its rights till 2027 on that street. So there is a little bit of risk for the applicant, but I think they're aware of that. So we don't have any remaining concerns on the paper streets at this point.
All right, thank you, Emily. Board members, Jeff?
So, just to be clear, if the city were to exercise its right to Blaine Street, would that affect the density calculation for the number of units? Is that being calculated into the lot area for this project?
I would have to verify whether it was calculated.
All right, with us this evening, we have the applicant's representative. Do you want to give us a brief update?
Sure. My name is Kendra Ramsell. I'm a civil engineer with Sebago Technics, and I'm here on behalf of Seacoast Land Acquisitions, LLC. I don't have too much more for you other than what Emily has stated. I can give a brief overview, but we were here last week, so that's pretty much it. The only remaining item of concern it seemed last week was the right title interest, and it sounds like it's been reviewed by the town attorney.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the applicant, board members? So this evening, Emily has prepared draft findings of facts for us as well as conditions of approval. Should finish thinking before I speak. So this project's been before the board a few times here. We've held our public hearing. We've opened and closed it. We've had discussion to date, and as Emily's mentioned, we have some additional information on the paper streets. That information seems to be clarified. I'm not sure if board members have any questions on that document.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Jim.
On past projects, I think you suggested a condition of approval regarding the, how they were constructed in accordance with the plans, to make sure that they were constructed in accordance with the plans, I guess primarily for elevation purposes. I didn't know whether or not you thought something like that would be helpful in this case, or is that unnecessary?
Yeah, we spoke about that last week, where this project didn't have the individual lots like some of the other ones. It was a little bit less of a concern because the developer was required and responsible for the entire site. We talked about as-built condition plans once the project was completed. Some of the early on site meetings that Emily has with DPW and the developer. So I'm content, I think, on this one here. This one's a little bit more straightforward and more control from the developer. But I'm welcome to other thoughts or concerns from any other board members.
No, I wasn't sure if it would be helpful or not, but your explanation makes perfect sense. This is not a bunch of single lots and where, the danger would be much greater, I would think, with people building at different elevations.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chair, would it be appropriate then to, it would seem we would essentially be doing three motions, right? One on the findings of fact, one on the conditions of approval, and the third would be just preliminary subdivision approval? Do I have that right?
Correct. We would review the findings of fact, the conditions of approval. This is for conditional use, preliminary subdivision, and site plan. So there's a few standards to review here. Again, in the past, we've done both ways, meaning we've looked at each individual section and we've made a motion on each individual section, or we can collectively make one motion. I believe our last discussions we've had, there were no outstanding items on any of the criteria, but the board can proceed how they see fit here.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to to approve the draft findings of fact as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Carrie Lynn. Any additional discussion?
I just note that the draft findings of fact include the prerequisites for preliminary subdivision review and also site plan review. So those are encompassed within the findings of fact, along with the fact that the property meets the conditional use standards of section 230-1406.
Thank you, Joyce. Any other board member discussion? So motion made and second to adopt the findings of fact as presented. And as Joyce mentioned, including the conditional use standards, correct? Section 230-1406.
Correct.
Those in favor? Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to accept the findings of fact as presented.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to adopt or approve the conditions of approval for the preliminary subdivision review, site plan, and conditional use review.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Joyce. Any additional discussion? All right, those in favor to adopt the conditions of approval as presented? Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. So then, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, if the board wishes, we could make a motion to find that the application meets all the criteria as one?
Yeah, just an approval motion.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the application for preliminary subdivision conditional use and site plan review for Blaine Street and Roebuck Avenue, map 40, lots 3, 4, 9, 10, and 11.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce.
Second.
And the second by Jim. Thank you. So motion made and seconded to approve the preliminary subdivision site plan and conditional use application for Seacoast Land Acquisitions for Blaine and Roebuck Avenue. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving along to our next item of business this evening, item 5D. This is a site plan review request for a private road application at 277 Buxton Road, map 107, lot 28-1 in the low-density residential zoning district. This would be for, is it Tucker's Way? Would you like to give us a brief rundown on this, Emily?
Sure, thank you. It's not super easy for the current planning staff to give you a full rundown of events, because as you can see, this application was reviewed in December 2020, initially by the planning staff that was in place at that time. So again, December 2020. What happened since then is we have a few applications like this that are pending for one reason or the other, probably about 3 to 5 left over in my department that have been here for a handful of years that we're working diligently to clean up. Dan Tucker since then had approached planning staff, and we had some staff meetings in 2023 to talk about options moving forward for the private road, and he was exploring some options either through a zoning text amendment to allow additional lots on an existing private road, and maybe something with LD 2003. But since then, Dan has requested that this goes to the planning board, so it's a private road application. And the concern at the time, Dan put this in under the previous zoning ordinance and the previous zoning standards, which at the time did not limit how private roads could be run parallel next to each other. Now, in the 2021 standards, through the Technical Design Construction Standards Manual, we have a requirement where roads have to be a certain distance, so roads aren't right next to each other. In 2020, 1920-ish, the city engineer and I had reviewed a road unrelated completely to Dan's proposal that was a road right next to a road, and there's just some safety considerations on entrances for that, which I think you're going to see reflected in the department comments back from that time. So here we have a situation where we have a previous proposal. There were different planners that came through. I think this was at the time when Bob was transitioning out and Jason was transitioning in. We also have 2 different sets of standards at the time that were, Dan applied under 2020 standards, and the question about vested rights really happens when on application completeness finding, and as you can see, staff had started that review and had noted the application to be complete at the time. So whether or not we agree with that staff's perspective is kind of a moot point for us. So I did check in with legal, and Dan has a right to request coming to the planning board, but just a little bit of history on the journey to this evening's meeting. So we still do have the concerns about how the roads are designed. We have recommended a few items that should be required to continue the review. So at some point in the future, we think these are important items that the board should ask for. And then we still have, Dan did do diligent work to try to get access to an existing private road, but he does not have the rights to that private road, and he can go into more detail, I'm sure, with you on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, I just
Jeff,
want to
yes.
disclose that, this lot is like 3 lots away from my residence. I've never met Mr. Tucker. I have had no conversation with him. I don't think that there would be a conflict, but I wanted to let the board and the applicant make that decision if I am to participate on this topic.
Thank you, Jeff. Any discussion or concerns from board members?
I don't see a problem for Jeff participating in the discussion.
Great.
No, I don't at all. It doesn't sound like it impacts you, and it doesn't sound like there's certainly any financial connection.
I agree. Thank you. And then the applicants with us this evening, Emily? Yes, please come on up. Any reservations from yourself as well for Mr. Bruchot's participation? Great, thank you. All right, if you could add anything to Emily's summary there, or maybe
she was
brief
accurate with what
discussion?
she said. It's been a long road, and I've worked with the town respectfully and tried to find out multiple different types of scenarios instead of the application that I submitted to begin with. I've worked with 3 different code managers to try to come up with something. It was back in 2021, January, that I submitted my application, and ever since April of 2021, I've been trying to work with the town and come up with something different, and there's nothing else that we can do, so I would like to try to get my private road approved so I can split it up to a couple lots. And I also wouldn't have done this if I was told from the very beginning that I couldn't, but the whole time I was doing the application, I was in contact with the town. Yes, 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 I bought additional property so that I could do this, and I was just working with the town, and they knew every step of the way that what I was doing. And at one time, I got an email from Bob saying that my application should be approved at this time.
All right, so just so I understand this correctly, so Emily's pulled it up here on the screen. So Tucker's Way, that goes to, I see your property at the rear, and then this property here forward, closer to Route 112 here, Buxton Road.
So I'll
That
give you
says
a brief.
outsale. That's your property as well.
Yeah, it said the Daniel Tucker and the outsale, and then that gray shaded, plus some of the driveway I bought extra. That makes sense?
Sure.
So it's all one still. It's all one piece of property.
Sure. And then the remaining land of your property there, it looks like there's enough property there that could be divided again as well. Is that
Possibly
correct?
right now,
I think somewhere in the application materials I read 3 property or 3 lots.
Because we did the wetland delineation too, to show that there was enough space to have the wetland incorporated into one of the lots also.
Sure. And then some of the concerns from DPW is there's another right-of-way immediately adjacent there on that lower page portion of property. And that, Emily, that was one thing I wasn't 100% clear on. Is that Wyatt Drive it says here?
I think they
Wyatt
changed it
Drive
to Ruby Road.
Ruby Road. Is that road complete? That's another private way, and that's complete?
That has 4 houses on it.
And it has 4 houses on it currently, all within one parcel? Do we know? Is that, I only see one parcel here, but that's.
They're all broken up. There's four 4 lots.
Yeah, there's 4 lots on it at this point. So this was an older plan, so I'm not sure if it was under construction. Maybe all the 4 lots hadn't been divided at that point. We can get you more details if you want anything on that when you review this. One of the struggles or one of the considerations, I guess, that Dan had at the time was the possibility of getting more lots off the existing road. And that was, at one point, we were talking about a zoning text amendment. But he doesn't have rights to this existing road.
In HOA, I talked to 3 of the 4 residents, and they said they didn't really want me to have access off their road. I do have an easement that I bought that's off where the shaded area off the outsale too, so there was talk of having access of that road also, but at this time, we're just trying to get Tucker's Way approved and go from there. But
And then, so this Ruby Way, you called it, Emily, that's a private way. Is that a paved private way, or is that a gravel
it's paved.
paved? And do we know roughly how wide that,
18 inches.
is it
18 feet, I mean.
18 foot or so width, and then
That was one of the things. We were trying to make that road into a public way, and then the town didn't want to make it into a public way anymore, and then they wanted to keep it as a private way, and then we were trying to get a zoning because you could only have 4 houses on a private way to allow more than 4 houses, but then by that time, the builder had already sold the lots off, and now it belongs to the HOA, so we don't have any rights or access to that.
and then your private way proposal here, I'm trying to find it on what's the width of that?
It would have to
That's
be 18
18 as
feet
well,
also.
right?
But it doesn't have to be paved.
And the proposal, right, the proposal here is just a paved apron and then gravel.
Just has to be built up to the standards.
Okay. Any questions from board members for the applicant on any of the material we have before us this evening? So, Jeff?
So that, the cross-hatched area that was purchased, looks like from Mr. Randall Clark, that gives you the width of what is needed for the right-of-way, is the 50 feet?
So I only had 28 feet of a driveway to begin with, and then I bought that extra that you see on the driveway, plus that front, to allow us to give enough space. But I added 28 to 50 feet. I added the road frontage off 112 that I needed of 50 feet by buying the extra land.
Mr. Chair, I'm a little confused about it sounds like back in 2020, the planning staff thought the application was complete, but if I'm understanding correctly, the planning board never voted on that, right? Is that right?
Emily, did this come to the
That
board?
is correct. No, it did not
It
come to
didn't
the
even
board.
come to the board.
And so I guess this is more of a legal question, but on the question of vested rights, that would only kick in once the planning board approves the application. Would that be a fair statement?
That would be, so we're in a little bit of a gray area. I see where you're saying, and if you'd like, I can go back to the city attorney and ask him to write up an opinion letter for you before you take action. But it's a little bit of a gray area because we have a situation where staff would be the reviewing authority on a private road. So there's a possibility this could have been reviewed and never sent to the planning board. So today, the process is, if we have a private road application, that gets approved, we report it into the planning board that we completed the staff review, and then we also mail notices to everyone within the 400 or the 800-foot radius.
So under the ordinance in effect in 2020, the planning staff's determination that the application was complete would be sufficient to go and kick in vested rights?
That's my understanding, yeah, because they would be the planning staff at the time would have been that reviewing authority, and it would have only kicked to the planning board if there was an appeal, and then the planning board would have reviewed staff's approval.
So for today's purposes, if the planning board were to determine this application complete, that's a standard under our current ordinance, but it would sort of be a duplication of what the staff had done before.
I think that's where, because there's so much gray area in this, the city attorney said, yeah, to me, just go ahead and put it forward to the planning board because we want to be fair to everyone involved.
Okay. No, thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Any other questions at this time?
I guess I'm wondering with the list of other items to be submitted before continued review, is that because the standards have changed, Emily? And so what was considered complete in 2020 is not good enough in 2024?
So I can't speak to why certain items weren't taken in at the time or why certain items were marked as complete. I don't know. I will tell you that your planning staff reviewing applications today is sometimes more strict than maybe staff reviews in the past. That's what I've been hearing anyway. So this is what we're reviewing it on and what the ordinance says. So, and as far as I know, these requirements were in the ordinance at the time.
But we can move forward. I mean, we could deem the application complete with the understanding that additional items are going to be provided before we move forward with any sort of final approval.
You could, well, like in the past, when we've done this, you've asked the applicant to return, and you've scheduled the public hearing, and then you've done the application completeness review and the public hearing in one night, and you've just waited till those items were received to make a formal application completeness finding. So that's an option available to you as well.
Great, thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Jeff, yeah.
I guess I'm trying to process. I mean, there's obviously where the most obvious thing is the visual conflict or the obvious conflict of the entrances onto Buxton Road. And, you know, it's prohibited. Well, it's a tough situation because if you were to look at a bigger tax map lot, map 107, once you kind of pass Tall Pines Drive, all of these lots are very long and narrow. And over the years, you've had this subdivision of the front lot with the back lot, and you've got these flag lots to make the back lot buildable, and then you've got spaghetti lots. I think all the definitions that we've been trying to weed out have taken place on the Buxton Road. So there's this access issue. And obviously, in this particular case, it sounds like the applicant kind of got bumped out, or he wasn't in line quick enough when the Wyatt Way, now Ruby Way, was proposed as a subdivision. And it just, you know, it creates conflict because now if we have two private ways running adjacent, obviously it's not compliant with our current standards. But even if it were to be two driveways and they were single lots, in my interpretation, they would not be compliant. You know, our Chapter 186-55 has permits for driveways and entrances on compact areas, and we start talking about the amount of frontage that's required. You need at least 175 feet with a minimum of, you know, a 30-foot wide gap. They're very specific criteria for the spacing of driveways. And when we have lot configurations like this and subdivisions that's taken place, it doesn't, it's hard to make it work. So how do we do this so that we don't end up with 16 driveways from the time you leave Loudon Road to Heath Road that are all crammed in and basically adjacent to each other? Particularly when they want to use it as a private road standard and gain access to multiple back lots. So I guess it's in different points in our ordinance, and I guess what I think I understood Emily saying is that it may have been in some of the ordinance at the time. Now, the technical design manual wasn't necessarily adopted or in play, maybe simultaneously, and the technical design manual is great at tool because it brings all this stuff together, but I think it was in 230-1101 at the time that has descriptions about private roads cannot run parallel to existing road within 250 feet of the existing. There's a lot of language in here that is narrowing our guidance to say, hey, this is not a good idea. There's conflict that talks about the need for visual buffers when streets run parallel to existing streets. So 188.7.11A2 is buffering that talks along interior streets running parallel to roads exterior to subdivisions. There needs to be buffering to prevent confusion, particularly at night. I think there's a fair amount of verbiage that needs to bring us great caution about this application or this instance for the public safety and confusion. But it also creates difficulty for the lots. But at the same token, I think the rear lot is technically, I think you read that it's listed in our packet as low-density residential, but I think it's actually in the RC zone, the protective zone. Once you're back more than 500 feet off the street, I think there's a zone change there because these basically go into the Heath Preserve. So where do we stand as a board trying to, do we try to find a solution that works for here? And once we do that, then every other lot complies with that. And we're basically exuberating the sprawl in the zone that our comprehensive plan very clearly calls out to protect. We don't, our comprehensive plan is asking us not to develop these rural areas. So I guess it's a hard situation, because I think that it would even be hard to keep this as one lot and not have a private road and just have a driveway, given that sort of narrow land, right? And I think one of the things, if I understand the trick of the private road, is that the lots are able to gain frontage on the private road that make them buildable. If this lot were to be sold as it is, without a private road, then it's not a buildable lot, because there's not enough frontage on Buxton Road. Now, that would something that would have been done previously, I'm assuming before the subdivision when you purchased it, or?
So when I purchased it and I talked to the town, I was told that I just need 50 feet of road frontage, that I had enough property that I could possibly get 3 lots, but I'm only going to do 2 at first. I was told if I hurry up and get my application in, that I'd be grandfathered under the old ordinance, and to hurry up and get it done. And that's what I did. Otherwise, if I wasn't told any of that, I wouldn't have done anything.
Because, well, it sounds like all that information, obviously, here is hindsight, but if you would have been first, then you would have been the exact mirror of Ruby Way. All that stuff would have held true. You would have been able to.
That's why they said I'd be grandfathered. And then since then, I've been trying to do other things, trying to work with the town to do something different, but every time I come across something, I can't do it.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
We did try to explain some, I think there could be some development done under LD 2003 here, so you might not be able to gain lots, but you may be able to do dwelling units, possibly two. So that is something that we're happy to continue to research with the applicant. We did offer that throughout the process. We offered a zoning text amendment if there were rights to the Ruby Road. So we've tried to offer different options for the applicant to explore along the way.
And it is zoned to have I think a farm. I think anything over 4 acres in that area. I could have horses. I could be coming in and out of 112 with big trailers instead of having a few residential houses instead. I think if there's any type of safety concern, it would be, I think, more safe to have residential houses instead of a farm in that area.
So, Emily, part of this here is the private road requirement with 4 lots, no more than 4 lots on it, correct? And that's in our ordinance and not an item that the board can review or waive. Is that correct?
I don't believe that the board could waive that. Could get legal opinion if you wanted on it, but.
And as long as that, aside from rights to Wyatt Drive or Ruby Way, that if that road were to not be a private road and be upgraded, then that requirement would change, correct?
So if what's shown on here as Wyatt Drive, which is Ruby, was upgraded to meet city standards and brought forward to city council, and the council decided to accept it, so there's a few steps, then there'd be no limitation on the number of lots that could be developed on it. However, the private road standard is quite different from the public road standard, so there would need to be some substantial upgrades. There's also the question of the applicant not having rights right now. If it was a public road, that wouldn't be as pressing of an issue.
Of course.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Jim.
on page 4 of the materials that we were given, there's like 10 bullet points, which I understand are different items that the planning staff would like the applicant to submit for continued review of the application. Are those items something that would cause us to determine that the application was not complete? Or would that be something we could hope to have the applicant get for us, and then we could determine application completeness and have a public hearing at the same time? So I guess that's really hopefully for
Yeah.
Emily.
Yeah, so what we've done in the past, Jim, we've requested these documents from the applicant to provide those at the next scheduled meeting or available meeting, and we schedule that date, we make it for a public hearing, and then we are able to review the application for completeness with the additional information at that time, and then proceed with the public hearing. So we could go in that direction if the board would like.
Well, Mr. Chair, it just seems that since there's a question about whether or not, I mean, this application might be, as the applicant said, grandfathered. And we can, look at that another day, I guess, but it seems to me that we need to, I don't know if those 10 bullet points are essential for application completeness or not, but If they are, or if at least some of them are, then, maybe continuing the application completeness finding, but also scheduling the public hearing would give the applicant a chance to go and fill in those blanks so that at the time of the public hearing, we could also determine completeness.
Thank you, Jim. Is that an official motion or just discussion?
Well, first I would like to hear from Emily to see if what I just said made sense, and if it did, then I'll make a motion.
I guess just to add to that discussion, I think for me, all of these items need to be addressed in some fashion beyond just not applicable. I think there needs to be more understanding here. I understand we are trying to pick up from 2020 or so. And then I think, Emily, is it possible to get some updated review comments from, I guess, at least Public Works? I know we have the memo from 2020, but do we have any additional information from Joe, review, opinion? And then, I'm not sure if there's anything we need from Tim Murphy, but maybe during any of those discussions, if anything comes up that's relevant to opinion from him, perhaps. I guess a side note that the applicant's been working through this diligently since 2020, and neighbors unwilling to. It's just it's unfortunate that that the applicant that there seems to be some unwillingness. That's all.
To use Ruby Road, and they've only been there. They haven't even been there a year yet.
Yeah, it's unfortunate in my opinion, but I guess that's just my thought. Just to add to your questions there, Jim. If some of these I think require some letters, IF&W, Historic Preservation Commission, the tribal governments. Traffic, I'm sure the engineer that the applicant has can address that, some recycling. Understanding, I think it's not my intent to put more burden on the applicant as far as time goes, but understanding that's the site a little bit more would help. But yeah, any other board member thoughts or concerns?
Jeff?
I didn't see the location of the test pits. I think most of the site was previously cleared, was their notes. Their packet or page 52 of our packet, their soils engineer had a limiting factor of groundwater at 15 inches on his test pits. So that brings the flag up for us for hydrological assessment, particularly with where Ruby Way has just been constructed. You have a lot of soil disturbance, and all of these homes are private septic, private water. It's, most of that area is forested wetland. It's all on the edge of the bog of the Saco Heath. So most of it, it's part of our critical natural, it's right next to the critical natural resources and the rural conservation and the comprehensive plan. So I think at some point as a board, we need to start kind of tightening up and try to be aware that, part of that safety of new homes in those areas falls on us to make sure that they will have good drinking water.
Thank you, Jeff. Emily, could you add possibly to the list if the board is in agreement. Can we get an updated review memo from Parks and Rec regarding trees as well? I'm not sure a street tree at the end of, between the two driveways or between the two private roads is the best place for a tree, personally. A lot of trees out there in that area. I think one street tree right at the end of the road in your vision is maybe not the best, but maybe an updated memo from that office. Any other thoughts, board members? So Emily, I see here a potential public hearing for this project on July 2nd. I'm not sure, given some of these items here, if the board wishes to move in that direction, if that's sufficient time, but we can make adjustments if we need to with the applicant based on schedule, if we need to make an adjustment or.
So we will notice the hearing for whatever date the board chooses. So maybe a question back to the applicant, will there be enough time for him to get these materials in 2 weeks? Because we'll need to notice, basically.
Yes, thank you for the reminder. So based on putting your application package together for the board's review with the July 2nd date, that is roughly 2 weeks, you said, for the applicant to get you some of these items. Do you think that's enough time to?
I'm not sure exactly all of the requests or which ones you guys are going to ask, but if you gave me a list, and then if I can get all the information you want, and then come back to Emily's department and let her know that I have it, and then we can set a schedule once I have everything that is requested. It's kind of hard to pick a date now without even knowing what type of information I get.
Yeah, I agree with you. To keep the process moving, I guess I'd like to pick a date for you. I guess, Emily, what do you think is the best course? Maybe we do the second meeting in July to be safe and give the applicant a little bit more time, and then I
can schedule it, then if it doesn't work, I can unschedule it or whatever.
Yep, so, or the board could continue it until the applicant has addressed the remaining items, then we can bring it back, and either staff can schedule the public hearing directly, or we can bring it back, you can do application completeness review, and then schedule your public hearing from there. Either option.
Okay, so if the board wishes to, they could ask staff to schedule a public hearing once the documents have been received, and
correct,
as the schedule allows. Okay, all right.
And I'll work with your department to find out which ones are required, what's required.
Yes, we have the list here, but we're happy to review it in more detail.
Find out which ones you actually want.
Any final thoughts from board members or a motion?
So if I understand correctly, Mr. Chair, we could, for today's purposes, we would move to continue this application until the applicant has provided the additional required information to the staff, and then have it brought back to us for further deliberation?
Yes, and ask staff to schedule a public hearing at that time to complete the application of completeness review during that meeting as well, if we'd like.
I'll add all that to my motion, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you for the
I'll
motion.
second that motion.
Joyce for the second, thank you. So a motion made and second to continue review of this application for completeness to the next available scheduled meeting and that staff schedules a public hearing upon receipt of the requested information within this evening's memo packet. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie, Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well, 5-0 in favor. All right, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you for your time. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Sorry. Did you want us to schedule a site walk? And did you want us to ask for advisory comments from Conservation Commission?
Board members, yes, I feel yes from the Conservation Commission. Board members, please chime in, but I think we have them at our disposal. I think that should be a default answer, in my opinion. And then a site walk, it's up to board members, I think. I think that's, it couldn't hurt, so. Yes, for a site walk.
Is that something that I would be involved in too?
Absolutely. Yep.
Show us around.
Okay, so for scheduling a site walk, are there any restraints? Did we want to wait till more information is received and schedule it after the public hearing? So we have more data available? In the meantime, we can ask the Conservation Commission for initial comments.
I don't know, board members, how do you feel? I like being able to have the site walk and then come back and have discussion. I think given the information we've seen to date, I guess I think I have enough information to have a site walk, gather additional information that's on the list here, and have a public meeting and have good deliberations. I don't know if I need, of the items on the list here, I don't think I need before we have a site walk, personally, but not sure how other board members feel. Jeff?
Well, I think it's, I mean, I kind of agree. We don't necessarily need all the information on the list. We're still in good weather. I think we've had fairly good turnout from the Conservation Commission to join us on the site walk, so we kind of all get a feel of what some of these areas are. I think it's very productive to have us all at the same time, so while we have nice weather in the season, we should definitely schedule a site walk.
Yeah. Does it help for board members if we schedule a site walk? We've done this in the past. We'll schedule a site walk at 4:30 or so, and then we come to the meeting. It's on the same night. We do other days, of course. We have most recently, but as the weather has become better, we've done that as well. If that helps with anyone's schedule, just as a.
Well, just respectfully, though, if we schedule it on an off night, I think it allows the Conservation Commission a chance to meet, and then they can send us their findings before we start our discussion.
That's a fair point. So, Emily, go ahead. We can do an off night.
So in this case, we know that Dan won't be back for June 18th, so if you did want to go down the route, in this case, you could schedule it for like June 18th, and we could invite the Conservation Commission members. A lot of the times we're up against, maybe they're on the next one or the one after that, but we could accommodate that in this one instance. Don't have to, but we can.
Do you want us? That's fine by me. We can. So the 18th. Do you want to? We've also done it in the past during a workshop time frame as well. Not necessarily at like 4 o'clock, but during our workshop time. So it could be. Maybe it's a 5 o'clock, and then we have a meeting at 6, or I'm not sure. I'm just throwing out ideas here at this point, but.
I do have our traffic peer reviewer coming on the 18th to do some workshop on the Park North traffic movement permit with us. So we may want to stick to 4:30 or 4:45, just so we get back here.
Okay, so 4:30 on the 18th is an option, or another night at another time? What works best for the board? Can we let's say this, can we tentatively schedule it, Emily, for 4:30 on the 18th, knowing we have a few board members here missing? And if that doesn't work, Jeff, no?
I don't know, I mean, just quite honestly, I don't particularly like the site walks before the meeting, especially with tick season, because you sit here and you feel like you're kind of itching the whole time. So, but if need be, I would make it happen. I kind of prefer an off night, but that's up to you guys.
Carrie Lynn's, doesn't matter. Jim?
I'm fine with either. I mean, an off night might make more sense just because we won't have to worry about possibly coming late if we have someone here doing a training.
Fantastic. How about an off night?
Great. How about June 25th?
June 20?
How about June 25th? Which is a Tuesday.
That works for me.
Same time, around 4:30.
Did you want to do 4:30 or 5?
Five works better.
5:30, doesn't, 5 o'clock is fine. 5 o'clock on June 25th, Tuesday.
Okay, we'll get that scheduled. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. All right, moving on to our next, thank you.
Mr. Chair, can we take a 5-minute break, please?
Yes, we can take a 5-minute recess, thank you. This evening. Our next item on the agenda is number 5C. This is for Genstar of Maine LLC, presented by Saco Technics. This is a site plan and conditional use review for a proposed 4,500 square foot sales and service facility for Hale Trailer and Brake and Wheel. It is a 17-acre trailer parking lot at 969 Portland Road, map 63, lots 9, 10, and 13 in the Portland Road zoning district. And this evening, this is an application of completeness review. Anything to add, Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The board first saw this in sketch plan back on August 16, 2022, so it's been conceptual till now, quite a long time period. There was a neighborhood meeting held in June 2023. The applicant has received their site location and development review from, this is the one that the Maine DEP was reviewing, so we recommended that the applicant wait until that review is completed before coming to the planning board. There are some comments here from our departmental reviewers. The board is asked to make a finding on application completeness and to schedule its public hearing. Some staff questions, we'd just like to know if you want to host a site walk. That's the question of the evening. And if you'd like to request comments from the Conservation Commission. We also have some other notes on here regarding impervious coverage, the city engineer's review, what type of application review. We have some photos here of what the design will look of the building, and look forward to answering any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Board members, any questions for Emily at this time? Seeing none, we'll turn to the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Matthew Orr. I'm a civil engineer with Saco Technics, and I'm here on behalf of Genstar of Maine. As mentioned, this application previously was in front of the planning board for sketch plan review almost 2 years ago now, coming up on 2 years. Overall, I don't believe a ton has changed in regards to layout of the plan. I think the building itself since that time shifted more towards the rear of the parcel, away from Route 1, so to the southeast. A majority of the site drains towards a wet pond, which is proposed at the rear of the lot. There are also 2 areas of porous pavement for stormwater treatment and detainment for some of the storage area. As mentioned, this is a approximately acre building with a drive-through canopy, which kind of gets it to that 45,000 square foot mark. Overall, the full site development is approximately 17 acres of impervious surfaces, and this was the previous lot was previously developed as the drive-in theater. As Emily mentioned, we received our DEP, Site Location of Development Act permit, about a month ago, I think, mid-May. That was quite some time in the making, and that kind of held us up from getting in front of you all this evening. Previous to that, we did receive our Army Corps of Engineer permit for the proposed wetland fill on the site. And we also did receive a Natural Resources Protection Act permit, PBR, for disturbance within the 75 feet of a stream identified on the site. Overall, we've been working through with staff on general comments relating to access to the site from Route 1 as far as curb cuts go, and the alignment with adjacent development across the street. And all utilities that would need to be installed have been stubbed into the property previously, so I know that stretch of Portland Road was recently or had been scheduled to be paved, so there would have been a moratorium in place, so there will be no disturbance within the street to tie into any sort of utilities for this facility. at this time, I'd turn it back to you all for any questions that you have regarding completeness of the application.
Great, thank you. Board members, any questions for the applicant?
I know there was some question about landscaping within the parking area. What was the decision on that? Is that something that's just not possible with the nature of the business? Because it's certainly not showing up on these sketches.
Yeah, and it is pretty much as you alluded to. For the large-scale vehicles to provide the movements and turning radius that they need, breaking up this space, the storage area for landscape islands is just not conducive. It doesn't allow, the maneuverability around the building and between drive aisles and the storage area that's required that they were looking for this site for the trailers. I guess, if those islands were to be installed, it's just going to start to cause the need for further expansion of what you see here beyond the pavement limits. So that would be more further impacts to the wetland areas that are on the site and other areas that are undisturbed and would remain in their natural state.
Right. And you mentioned you have another location in Portland. Is this replacing the Portland location or supplementing it?
Yes, the Portland facility will move and relocate to this Saco site. So this building and site development is about double the size of what the Portland facility is, which is just what they've seen in the growth of the area. This facility would serve, a large chunk of their northeastern market. So, all of Maine, all of northern New England. It's a pretty vast area, and if you've been to the site in Portland, storage of their trailers has exceeded the site. It's parked into the street, and I know that was brought up by staff multiple times. They don't want that in this facility. So that is also the case for why so much area has been shown for storage and paved area.
Well, there's really not going to be any pedestrian access, you don't assume. I mean, this is just really purely commercial.
Yes, correct. Yeah, it's long-term rentals and sales of trailers, specifically tractor trailers for commercial operations. So yeah, most customers would arrive on site with a tractor or some sort of vehicle to be able to pull a trailer off site.
So this is, so a truck would come empty, come pick up a new trailer, and then they'd leave.
Correct.
Sort of essentially.
Yep.
Jeff?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. So, picking up new trailers, but you also do repair and refurbishing of older trailers, correct, in that facility? So, are there any special parking areas or is any area designated like as a safe haven? Do you have any like tank vehicles that might have hazardous material residue that might be stored here, waiting repair?
It's something I can certainly ask the applicant, but I don't believe that, I'm not sure as if they conduct business with that sort of material, but I will have them clarify that for next time.
So I guess, did any staff review, did you design any civil areas, right, in the stormwater, the runoff and retention of the impervious areas? If there is a dump trailer that carries sludge cake and there could be PFAS that washes out of it in the rain, it's empty, but it's got residual in it. Are there any areas that are intended to try to encapsulate some of that sort of runoff?
No, we did not identify any of those areas on the site.
It looks like a lot of the screening and buffering, because I thought there was a lot of impervious area, and I noticed that the city engineer had picked up on that as well. So obviously, that's the amount of area that your client's looking for to have storage so that they can meet the requests of city staff not to have vehicles cascading or flowing out into the roadway. So the existing, kind of the loop lines that look like the buffering, is there a plan as far as, that's a lot of area to plow in the wintertime? Are there plans as where the snow storage would be on this site?
We do, I believe we did identify on the blown up site plans, areas of snow storage. Those areas were mostly to, if I zoom in here, maybe, more so to look at storage of what's around the building would be where the largest circulation. These areas out back are where trailers would be stored, so not, you know, the drive aisles themselves would be cleared, but a majority of that would be covered with product, so it wouldn't need to be constantly cleared.
I did note you have some light poles that are positioned throughout that storage area. Is there anything special that they're doing as far as to try to buffer those or protect those? Was that something that the property owner wanted, like for safety and security reasons? Or is it something you were trying to meet a city requirement by having illumination and...
Out back here where my cursor is?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we do have, again, it's harder to see at this scale, but we do have protective bollards around those light poles. But they were lined up to be ideally where you'd have, you know, two trailers back to back, so.
Yeah, I guess, was there any response to staff's request about trying to limit the impervious area? Now, I thought I heard you say that there's a couple of sections of pervious pavement treatments. Can you kind of show us on that plan, like how large of an area that is?
Yeah, so this lighter gray areas that are on here are where the porous pavement sections are. And then those are collected and outfall over in this general direction. And the remainder of the site is collected and goes to the wet pond out back.
That's all I have currently, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other questions or comments from board members?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. How many tractor trailer, full-size tractor trailers go through in and out on a daily basis over there?
At this time, I believe the applicant has stated currently, their current facility, they see about, I believe they termed it as 15 gate movements a day. So that's both in and out. So total people coming in and out of the site would be about 15 customers a day.
But now that the facility is going to be larger, are they expecting more traffic?
I don't believe they're expecting more traffic. So our traffic would have been, that was done in memos, would have been done based on the facility size that is proposed for actual trip generation. But I think it's more that they are looking to have more storage on the site, so they still see the same amount of customers today. It's just they don't have a place to put all of the product that they would like to have on site.
Just one question, Mr. Chair. So now I understand, I guess the pervious pavement is those two light-colored sections. Is there a reason why that volume of or amount of that parking area is pervious versus impervious? I mean, could you make more of it pervious pavement to help with the stormwater treatment?
We certainly could, and we had looked at that previously. I think a lot of the So a lot of it comes down to just grading of the site and how the runoff gets onto this porous pavement sections. We did also try to keep it within the actual limits of where storage would be taking place, so, you know, not where there's going to be a lot of truck traffic or other turning movements over the porous pavement. The biggest reason for why we split up the stormwater as well is in conversation with DEP, they had, so there's two streams. There's one here on this northern property line, and then also towards the south of the property. And they wanted us to mimic similar watersheds present day to post, so that's why we added in that porous section. So we outfall to both of those locations to keep a similar flow pattern.
Makes sense.
Thank you, Jim. Matt, how much impervious area is there?
I believe it's 16, it's just shy of 17 acres.
Including the building?
Correct, 16.8 acres.
How many trailers does the applicant wish to store on site? Is there a parking plan, or are they just kind of park the trailers just free for all out there, or is there some organization to that?
Yeah, so this was set up so it's similar to, you know, like the interstate kind of truck, like your trucking plazas as far as spacing for the trailers and all. They generally, again, the current facility is very over in demand, so they kind of just park them and put them wherever they would like. But here we tried to, you know, space them about 5 feet in between each trailer. The current facility, I know we provided it in the latest response to staff comments. I believe it housed approximately, it was either 140 something or 160 something trailers. So this site was, again, doubling that number. It was about 320 or so, I believe, is what can be stored on this site. So it would be orderly, but I mean, it's not, you know, not to a typical like parking lot layout that, you know, not trying to lock them into a pattern that they need to also.
So
park
there's
their
no
vehicles.
striping plan or anything like that?
Not specifically, no.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Is there, I'm seeing a line and I can't seem to pull up my, it's kind of down there. Between the building and where the tractor trailers will be stored, is that dotted line a buffer of any sort?
This line here.
Yeah.
So that is this front half of the site has a heavy-duty pavement section, just because there's a lot of turning movements here with trailers and the trucks around the building. And then outside of these porous pavement sections, the rest would be standard duty. So it's just a thinner section of gravel and thinner section of pavement.
So there's no, so basically you can see all of the tractor trailers in the back from the street?
No, I mean, this building I mean, you do have this buffering here, and then again from the sides, and then with the way the building is situated. And the elevation drop is pretty significant from Portland Road to the rear of the facility. I believe it's about 10 or 15 feet across there. So I don't think you would see a ton of trailers, you know, once trees have grown in and are mature that are shown that are going to be planted. Obviously, day one, when things are recently installed, you may be able to see some towards the rear of the facility.
Okay, thank you.
You're wondering, Carolyn, how many
how many trailers you see past the 1 acre building?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or even on the sides, you know, if you,
Mhm.
there's businesses, I'm trying to picture where we're at here. I can't remember if there's residential. There's also the amusement park across the street with the kids that kind of concern me, with the trucks coming in and out.
Any other questions from board members regarding the, again, we have this evening for an application of completeness. Staff has also asked us about a site walk for this application.
Mr. Chair?
Jeff, yes.
So Matt, I know that there was discussion, and it sounds like you worked with staff to align the entrance and exit, or the entrance with the opposing entrance to the water park.
Mhm.
And I remembered reading somewhere a little bit about trying to modify some of the width of them so there wasn't confusion, which obviously is a little bit of a challenge, right? You're trying to design entrances that are designed for tractor trailers to come in, and passenger vehicles might get a little confused. Is this plan that's in our packet the final rendering of that?
Yes.
Okay. I was just kind of looking a little bit at the entrance. I mean, I guess it's always a challenge on the skill level of the drivers that are getting there. It looks like both those entrances are 30 feet wide, approximately, the
Yes.
entrance and exit. And so the turning template for most tractor trailers, we'll maneuver that from the inside lane fairly well.
Yes, yeah, we provided into our last response to comments to staff, entering movements from both northbound and southbound on Portland Road, and the same for exiting traffic as well.
Okay. I'm just a little bit surprised that, particularly with the attention to the runoff and the treatment and not wanting to exceed, previous design conditions, that nobody talked about what might be running off from some of the trucks and trailers in that parking area. But I guess that's what their expertise is. So
That's an item that we can further deliberate on during deliberations.
I mean, is that something that would be appropriate to ask the city engineer if they've given some consideration to that, particularly where this entity is not only selling new, but servicing used trucks. So if you have vehicles, I mean, we've gone over water quality of our impaired stream areas, and we talk about how animal waste can be a contaminant. So what happens if somebody has hauled compost, or not so much compost, but manure from a site, and it's a trailer body, and it gets parked back there, and there's runout out of that? Could that possibly affect those streams as it runs through? It's just a thought, and I don't know, it would be too much to ask the city engineer to kind of weigh a little comment on that, given the amount of impervious area.
Yep, so we'll specifically go back and ask him that and any other questions that you have. It sounds like there's buffering questions and water quality questions and hazardous storage of materials or chemicals. That's what I'm hearing so far anyway.
Mhm.
Yeah, so the hazardous one, I think, would be the fire department as well. If it's a petroleum tanker that's empty, but it hasn't been washed out, is that a concern for, neighbors? I'm assuming it'd still be placarded, but just to kind of get their reviews from a different angle on the thought process. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to find the application complete.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
I'll second.
Thank you, Joyce, for the second. Motion made and second to find the application for site plan review complete. Any additional discussion? Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. So with that, would the board members like to schedule a site walk?
Yes.
Yes. I agree. So Emily, we've scheduled one for the 25th on another application. Yeah, is it too much to hit 2 site walks on one day? Do you recommend splitting them up?
We could probably do it, but the first site walk, this should be the second because the property's a lot larger. So we would start this one at maybe 6:15 or something.
I think that works for me.
When you say the first site walk is the second, do you mean Tucker's Way would be moved to 6:15 and this one would be at 5, or Tucker's Way is still at 5?
Tucker's Way is still at 5, so we would just do this one 6:15 and use the rest of the light probably. It's a large site, so.
I'm just wondering, respectfully, I don't think Tucker's Way is going to take us all that long to walk through, and, we could,
Can we do 6?
yeah, well, no, I guess, whatever. 6:15 is probably good. She's better at this than I am. Yeah.
I have Tucker's Way as 5.
Right.
6 is fine. We can also notice it immediately following the first site walk, so like that's fine. It's just, I know even the one we did for Blaine Street, I think it took the full hour. And then it was like 10 minutes to get back for that meeting that night for conservation.
Okay. Okay, so we could say 6:15, immediately following the first site walk at around 6:15 or so. Okay. So 2 site walks on Tuesday, the 25th. That sounds good to me.
Is there anything specific that the board would like to see, like staked out as far as building location or any of that?
Yeah, I was just going to go over that. So I think entrances, the curb cuts, understanding the curb cuts, some of these immediate landscaped areas and the building area. I know that area is cleared for the previous use of the drive-in, so there's some room there, and obviously we can't stake out 17 acres of parking area and impervious. That's not the intent, but significant features, I think, would be important. If there's an accessible route towards the back and into some of those wetland areas, that might be a good thing to look at as well. Perhaps some of the property lines.
So would it be helpful if they could do both property lines and limit of clearing, so we have a comparison of what buffer will remain?
Yep. Additionally, I think some 3D renderings, I think, would be beneficial to the board to understand
the approach to Portland Road, maybe both from the north and the south, and what we could expect to see there in context.
Sure.
And I guess by in context, not just a building on a parking lot, but I know I might be asking a lot, but almost a photorealistic, a photo merge of the rendering on the site with existing neighbors. I think for a project this size and its significance, I think it would help the board. It'd go a long way, I think. But Jeff?
So just more specifically, so when you say that 3D rendering, as we look in from the street, from the curb, that hopefully the perimeter of the buffers, that if they're not clearing that natural vegetation, will give us a sense of scale and mass? Is that, that's what I would really like to see, is the sense of scale
Yeah.
of,
That's
so if
my
they
intent.
can use the existing tree line or something to give us that sense, perspective would be helpful, I think, in our opinion.
Yes, that's my intent.
And you want to show the abutting properties too, or some view of them?
Yeah, I don't think just a standalone 3D rendering of the building with a sea of parking around it with some trees in the background is quite going to explain how this site or this building fits in this site. How is it? What's its relationship to the neighboring properties, the neighboring foliage, vegetation, buffers? Yeah.
And Mr. Chair, I think, based upon the previous comment you made about the Conservation Commission, do you want the Conservation Commission to also participate in the site walk if they're available?
Yes, I think that would be great. Participation in the site walk and comments from from them as well. And I guess, Matt, as well, not speaking for the board, but maybe a few examples for the board to understand in context the parking area, and maybe specifically a comparison to maybe some familiar areas in Saco to us. So perhaps the parking area for Funtown, and maybe more closer the parking lot for Aquaboggan as well, to maybe just sort of a comparison to that we can say, all right, we know how big the Aquaboggan parking lot is, the Funtown parking lot. What roughly is this area here? Twice the size, 3 times the size.
Sure.
I don't think there's anything quite this scale in Saco for us to really bring it down to that pedestrian level. I guess that's all my thoughts. And then, I guess, Emily, we have one last item, I guess, the scheduled public hearing.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll move to schedule a public hearing for July 2nd, 2024.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
I'll second.
Second by Carrie Lynn, thank you. Any additional discussion on scheduling a public hearing for July 2nd? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. All right, I believe that's everything. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, Emily, our next item on our agenda this evening, Item 5D. This is 352 North Street. This is a site plan review for a proposed 19,300 square foot, 130 room, 5-story hotel with associated site improvements. This is map 84, lot 2 in the Business Industrial Zoning District. This is presented by Teradyne Consultants, and this evening we are looking at this for an application of completeness review. Anything additional, Emily?
I did put it in the memo, but just wanted to give you an overview that this started as a larger project that you saw in sketch plan back in June 2023. The applicant has since pared it down to be only the 130-room hotel. There's a note here that we have that staff is asking for any additional notes on the plan set that reference any type of water park to be removed before this comes back before you, so that'll get cleaned up. Peer reviews have been underway, so we've pared down the peer reviews based on the 130-room hotel. Traffic was a big conversation that's ongoing, and there's comments there from city staff. And then we have we gave you the review standards, and then whether or not you'd like to host a site walk and get comments from the Conservation Commission. So this is, I just wanted to explain that and just kind of make it clear that the applicant's only looking for the hotel at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Any questions by board members for Emily at this time? No, and with us we have the applicant's representative. If you would like to add anything.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm Tim Misher with Teradyne Consultants, representing Northeastern Hospitality Holdings. And we are here tonight presenting the 19,300 square foot, 5-story, 130-room hotel at the existing Ramada. So what we're looking at is the latest site plan for the project. We have provided the exact number of parking spaces per the ordinance at 249. Now, the plan is for the existing Ramada to remain. And after this summer, after construction starts and after the summer season, the pool will be removed, the convention center will be removed, and that area will be returned just to grass and vegetated. And because of the ongoing Main Turnpike Authority work on the new exit 35, the old on-ramps, off-ramps from 95 have been disconnected. The Turnpike, at the expense of the applicant, has built a new road off Route 112 for a joint between XL Sports and the Ramada Inn. The history of this project is this is a 3-lot commercial subdivision that was approved in like 1999. And the applicant has bought lots 1 and 2, and XL Sports has lot 3. So there are combined utilities between XL Sports, and we have a proposed utility plan that has provided for an upgraded pump station that will be offered to the city, and the city has expressed that they, due to the size of the pump station, that they will take that into their ownership. So we will be providing easements, access easements to them. The force main, there's a force main coming over from XL Sports, goes to a new pump station, and a new force main that goes out towards the northbound off-ramp toll booth. It then goes by gravity out to Route 112. So basically, a lot of what we're seeing for the proposed pavement and whatnot is existing grass right now. It was basically built up and leveled off and was there for basically a pad situation that never took place. So the Ramada has been improved this summer with the exterior. And what we're doing is proposing the new 130-room hotel. We've got the new access, and we, at the direction of city staff, we have done some reserved parking, which is some of that hatching you see along the lower bottom of the site plan. So reserved parking, which means that those areas will be built up with pavement build-up, but they will be loamed and seeded. And so if there was a future time that there was an expansion at the site, parking would be in place. And at this time, the landscaping plan has been peer-reviewed and approved. We are working through the traffic. We are working through the public works. When we submitted last fall, we received a bunch of comments from Public Works that we addressed. We did go through a redesign. So if, Emily, if you want to switch over to the grading plan, please. So I do want to mention with me tonight, I do have Steve Roy, who's the head architect, and we have John Adams, who is the head traffic engineer. So the three of us will be here to answer any questions that we may have. So if we're looking at the grading plan now, what we're basically seeing is one large gravel wetland with a detention area. All that water quality treatment for the project is taking place there, and in the discharge, it goes off towards the wetland and then discharges down towards the 95 ditch line and towards the Saco River. There are no wetland disturbances on this project. We have been in contact with the natural area programs and Army Corps, and everything has come back fine for there's essentially just no impact, since this is essentially a developed site from early 2000s. We have minimal tree clearing. We are maintaining buffers to the extent possible. We are improving the walkway with XL Sports, with lighting, fencing, paving. So we're improving the life safety. Because if in sometime at this, on a typical weekend in February, kids are playing in XL Sports and the family might want to be staying at the new hotel. And if there was a future development on this parcel as well, then there's potential to be quite an attraction. So we do want to improve that walkway across. The applicant would be remiss if I didn't mention that there's been no assistance from XL Sports on this project, but I'll just move on from that. So at this time, have existing utilities are all in the site. We've got gas, water, sewer, and I'm sure, and electric. Basically, the plan is we've reconfigured everything. So we've got all the utilities now in corridors. So underneath the proposed road, we've been in contact with the fire department for the fire lane around the entire site. We will be submitting a final package to the fire department for review now that we've finalized the design for the hotel and we provided the turning movements for the site. So having said that, this is a site location amendment project. There wasn't a site location for this project back in 1999 and 2005. So we are working to get the permits for that. Again, there's no wetland permits, and there is no Army Corps interaction for any stream interferences or buffers. We have worked out with Public Works on working through construction phasing plans. So the intent would be to keep the Ramada open to the extent possible, and where parking would be and where construction laydown areas would be, and that type of thing. And I do want to let Steve, the head architect, talk about the unique construction of the building, and I'm sure you probably have questions as well. So at this time, what we've done is we've basically dislocated this from any of the main turnpike, and the applicant is still working through some easements and with the Turnpike Authority and working through their lawyers on that. The stormwater, as I said, has been maintained to meet DEP and city requirements, 50-year storms and controlling 100-year storms as well. And with that, I'll take any questions at this time for civil before we'd like to turn it over to the architects.
Any questions, board members, for Tim here? Jeff?
So I think I understood you saying that the pool and the convention center from the existing facility will be torn down after the summer season.
Correct.
But the existing hotel section will stay, so you'll have two buildings.
Correct.
Lodging in both of them.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, because if there was a future development, the projections are that both hotels could be at capacity during peak seasons, like during vacation weeks, shall we say. And the combination with Excel Sports and the main sports across the street has the potential to be quite an attraction for the area. And obviously, John is here to speak about traffic, but at this time, we have been working with Diane and with the DOT, and I wanted to go into more detail on this, but as of just for the new hotel, there are like no improvements on 112 required at this time. So that's kind of been a good plus on our side. So we've submitted our stormwater and our design packages to Public Works. We're working with the fire department. The landscaping's been improved. We're working with Diane, so we feel like we're pretty far ahead in the game on this project at the time. Excuse me. So with that, I'll take any questions if there's anything on civil.
Any other questions from board members?
Okay. I'd like to turn it over to Steve to talk about the hotel itself.
All right, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Steve Roy from Weeman Lanphier Architects. I don't know if you have elevation or plan drawings that you'd like to put on the screen. This is largely unchanged from last year when we last presented. It is a town place in Fairfield in dual brand, so it is essentially one lobby with the two brands within the same building. It is largely based on prototype information from the hotel. So we have customized it to the number of rooms and the type of rooms that want to be used by Northeastern Hospitality. Typical of a hotel, breakfast area is included. There's a lobby and living room area. 130 keys within the current plan. First floor with the current submission includes some conference and meeting spaces as well. But primarily the typical fitness room, back of house spaces, laundry on site, very typical of the type of hotel. On the outside, again, we're sticking with prototype materials, typically EFIS, which is an insulated exterior finish system. There is some metal trims that are being used, aluminum framed windows, and a lot of the patterning and a lot of movement within the facade is generally part of the prototype. So I'm happy to answer any questions related to the building design itself.
Board members, any questions? Jeff?
So as far as the facilities inside, you have the conference rooms and the breakfast area. Is there like a full commercial kitchen in here where you can actually prepare meals for on-site trainings and facilities, or is it more of a small prep kitchen for the
It's
traditional
more of a
breakfast?
prep kitchen in this submission.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Just, well, it says suites, town place suite, so some of the rooms will have kitchens?
Some of the rooms do have like a small refrigerator, small dishwasher, enough for somebody to stay for, a week and be able to cook a small dinner.
So they'll have ovens or
Cooktops.
range tops?
Yep. Not an actual oven.
Got it. No swimming pool in here, then?
No swimming
Not indoors? Right, that's part of the future concept.
Yeah, this, as far as the way the building is constructed, they are going to be built in modules. So you can generally see it in the plan, but if you go from top of page to bottom of page, each of those, basically a room on either side of the hotel is all one box. So it's a series of boxes that'll be put in place and tied together and stacked. So that'll shorten up the construction duration.
Any other questions by board members? So you mentioned the exterior building materials, it's mostly EFS, and that's driven by the hotel entity?
That is a brand standard, yep.
Is that their only standard?
That is what they offer as their prototype. Obviously trying to, it's a good system. It allows for, exterior insulation to be part of the package, efficient.
I know board members may recall some of the last projects. We tend to try to shy away from some of the EFS. Some projects that we've seen in the past with EFS haven't been successful, and we've seen them come back and reclad the projects. So we try to look for something a little bit more durable. That's just sort of a note, something to think about. Jeff?
I just wanted you to kind of elaborate. I'm not really familiar with the product, but it sounds like you're kind of touching on some design standards, and that's kind of where I was thinking, and unfortunately my tablet keeps buffering when we try to get further into the packet, so I'm glad that Emily has it up. But so you kind of touching on some design criteria?
Yeah, in this area, I can't seem to think of any other projects that have EFS. Not many projects in town have EFS. So just trying to think of the overall context and neighborhood. I don't believe the hotel on site has EFS. I believe that's
It's
more
fiber cement.
clapboard.
Yep.
So trying to keeping with more consistent materials in the area. I know there's Howard Sports and there's or XL Sports. There's a metal building, and it's hard to compare to, but just sort of a discussion point, not really pertinent for the application of completeness, but perhaps additional discussion if the project continues, as it continues.
Mr. Chair, it looks like the checklist for the application, like all the boxes have been checked, to suggest that the applicant has submitted all the information we need. So unless there's further discussion, I'd move to find the application complete.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
I'll second.
Second by Joyce. Any additional discussion? So motion made and second to find the application as presented this evening complete. Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Site walk. Would the board like to perform a site walk for this project? I think I see some nods, yes.
Yes. Not on the 25th.
I think the 25th we're full. So perhaps, Emily, another day could be presented. I know it's a developed site, but maybe jumping ahead to the Conservation Commission if they, a recommendation from them as well if they'd, not to take back from what I said earlier, but I know it's a developed site, but there is some changes, and at least give them the opportunity to comment if they feel necessary.
Yes, I don't want to overload them, so I'll let them know the priority are the other two applications, if that's okay, because they
Yes.
involve more
Yes, ma'am.
development. Okay. And then perhaps June 17th before the council meeting. That's a Monday.
I could support 17th.
Yeah.
Yeah? Yes?
Lisa, you have enough time for notices, right? Okay.
5:30 that day? 5?
I would be a huge fan of 5 if it's possible, but
Okay. 5 o'clock on the 17th, Monday, for a site walk.
great, thank you.
Thank you. All right, and then, board members, as far as scheduling a public hearing for this item,
Mr. Chair, I'll move to schedule a public hearing for July 2nd.
Second.
thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Joyce. Motion to schedule a public hearing for this item on July 2nd, 2024. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to schedule a public hearing on July 2nd. I believe that is everything on this item, Emily, yes?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, just to clarify, like, as far as the site walk, they're going to stake out the location of the new building. So,
Yes.
I mean, I don't know, maybe whatever way they can kind of mark it up a little bit, so we have a sense, maybe from the perception of the Turnpike entrance, then North Street, whether it be, I don't know, balloons or whatever you do in the industry to give us a little bit of height. I mean, obviously don't need all 5 stories, but if we can see 20 feet up or something, give us a sense of where it is, I think is the most important thing for buffering and as we look over the design criteria, how it's going to be compatible with the existing building. Would be helpful for me.
The new hotel is in an open area.
Sure,
So
but I mean,
we can stake out the four corners.
Sure.
that's fine, right? I mean, as long as
Yeah.
we can see it, if we kind of get a sense of what it might look like when we're driving by the turnpike, I mean, some of that area is open, and as long as we can see the 3-foot stake, I think that's fine with me.
And then, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
perhaps just determining the height of the existing building could help.
Correct.
Yeah.
For some comparison, sure. Yep. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, members.
All right, continuing with our agenda this evening, we have general correspondences. Are there any general correspondences this evening, Emily?
No, I have something under planning department updates.
Okay, moving on to that next item.
Okay, just give me a minute to find it here, please. So, as you know, the ecology school is under quarterly traffic monitoring requirements. So our peer reviewer was scheduled to do the quarterly monitoring, and I was surprised to find out that she did not do it. When I asked her the reason, she explained that there were no events well, there was one event, but turned out it snowed that day, so they wouldn't count in the snow according to best traffic practices, traffic count practices. So I asked her to provide this in a memo to us, explaining the reason why she wasn't out there. Also asked her to just be very diligent about making sure that we don't miss any quarter going forward, because it's very important to me that we completely follow this condition. So whether or not there's a specific event, if there's no events, some event has to be monitored, even if it's just people going to work that day. So going forward, the question that she and I both had is, did you want us to do a double count in this quarter? We would space it out when there are more events coming up. So there are several events in June and July. I didn't look as far as August, but there are definitely events.
Any thoughts from board members?
I would think we just stick with the regular schedule and do a quarterly count.
And
I don't think we need two.
Kind of think you want 4 in a year. I don't see the harm in doing 2 in one quarter. They're kind of looking at the schedule and picking it up, and we've always known that I think the winter season tends to be a little bit lighter on the schedule anyways, so having 3 that are done over the summer months, I don't think is harmful.
I guess I'd personally like to keep the pressure on and get the traffic counts. I know that monitoring that left turn lane's pretty, that was a lot of discussion on that. But
So excuse me, through the chair, I'm not familiar with this, so what is the traffic studies going for?
Yeah, that's Mr. Chair, if I may. That's a good question.
Absolutely. You can explain it very well, I'm sure,
Well,
for this particular project.
Yeah, so June 2018, around that timeline, Ecology School got site plan approval. They have a contract zone that was approved before that. So it was interesting. I was coming in after it got approved. And as part of that original approval, a left-hand turn lane had to be constructed as an off-site improvement. And there was no date on when that had to be done. But through some time, the applicant came back to the planning board and provided additional traffic information and requested that monitoring be done in the interim, and the timeline for that condition to construct the off-site turn lane be extended to 2025. So fall 2025 is our completion date. And there's an exact date, and I believe it's November 2025. Don't be concerned, we have it on the calendar. Demetria's monitoring it. So in the interim, we have quarterly traffic monitoring, which the applicant and the board had agreed to back in, I believe, 2022, but please don't quote me on that exact date. I can get you more details if you need it. And so since then, the planning department has been making sure the monitoring's been happening. We've not missed one since I've got here, so I was surprised that we missed this one because I had had a conversation early on in the season to make sure it was on the schedule to be done. So like I said, going forward, I don't anticipate that we'll be missing any, but that's why we have a memo on the file explaining the reasoning.
Is this the school on Flag Pond?
Simpson Road.
Simpson Road. I don't know that.
Since this, over the last couple of months, the city council and the city staff went for a business partnership initiative agreement, a BPI grant application. So now the turn lane will be constructed, and it will be constructed using a third as funding, a third from the DOT, a third from the city of Saco, and a third from the ecology school. The ecology school will, over a number of years, they have a subsequent agreement, will be paying back their portion, the city's third of a portion, over a number of years. So there will be, this will be constructed. We have grant funding for it. There's funding behind it now. Just FYI for the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think, yes, we would like to try to get an additional traffic count. I think that would be appropriate for the project in neighbors to ensure city and board due diligence.
So we will plan for 2 in the next quarter, provided there are enough events spaced out far enough apart. And then if there's not, then we will make sure we do 2 in the next quarter, just to make sure that we have enough. We have 4 total this year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other additional updates or discussions?
So I do have just to report in that we did site plan amendment approvals for EV charging station at 824 Portland Road. It is a current car dealership, so I think it's going to be charging the cars on the lots, but it's good to see EV charging infrastructure growing. We also did a site plan amendment for parking lot at 19 Millbrook Road in the business park there. And we will be having our traffic peer reviewer come here June 18th. Projects under review are still on our webpage, so you can spread the word about those. And that's all I have for now.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item, number 8, any planning board comments? Questions or concerns from board members on any items?
I think we rocked tonight. I mean, it's 9:30. We busted through that thing.
We started early.
Oh, yeah, we started early. Oh, dang it.
But we didn't start an hour earlier than last
True,
time.
that's
true.
Yeah.
We're not all yawning and, right.
All right, with that, a motion to adjourn?
Adjourn.
Great,
Second.
thank you. We'll adjourn at 9:32 PM. Thank you.